our individual lives as we live our life in a day-to-day way. So I am very, I don't know what the right word is, but it's interesting for me to speak about nonviolence because there's so much of a focus and an emphasis on a culture of peace. And what I've learned, especially through my legal work and through my spiritual training and exploration and discovery, and my discussions and dialogues with different people, including some of the senior members of the Brahma Kumaris, it's about peace and nonviolence, about how they both go together. Because to understand one is to understand the other. And I think that many of you know that the UN, by resolution, by what other means, but by resolution is how the UN really acts. And in 2007, the UN passed a resolution marking October 2nd, which is Gandhiji's birthday, as the International Day of Nonviolence. So since that time, the world, the UN, has been dedicated to October 2nd in terms of celebrating Gandhi's birthday and his incredible contributions, and also having an emphasis and a focus on nonviolence. And this comes on the heels of September 21, which is the International Day of Peace. So for me, being a lawyer, I've dealt with a lot of crimes against humanity and war crimes and just horrific things that people would say are not human. You know, how can human beings act in this way to harm another person in such a egregious manner? And because of that work, I think that also facilitated my asking questions around this idea of what is peace and what is nonviolence, and how can we create peace, and what does that mean? And what about justice? Where does that play into all of this? And is life fair? Is justice fair? You know, a lot of these very deep questions. At one point in time, I was working in the UN and working on Security Council resolutions that dealt with the situation of children in war, of civilians, and particularly women in armed conflict. You know, and I had done a lot of work with survivors from the Rwandan genocide and heard their testimonies and their stories. And that's really what prompted my international legal career. So that's the context of my background and what led me to really start on the path of formally promoting a culture of peace and nonviolence. And when we talk about nonviolence, I really like to bring something up that has been an incredible tool. I have kept this on my refrigerator for years since I got it. And I don't even know if the Brahma Kumaris would remember it. You may. I hope that you could see it. This is a card. It's a postcard from an event that the Brahma Kumaris did, I think, in 2011. And it says on the bottom, nonviolence. It was about spotlighting different values at that time. And I don't know if I chose it or if I received nonviolence, but this is what we're here to talk about today. It's about the underlying values, the way we live our life. You know, and I can say, being a lawyer, the value that I try to take in the legal profession is about preventing violence. How can we use law as a healing tool? Because that is the most noble thing about the law. The spiritual intent, the highest value, is to facilitate healing. It really is to bring people together in ways where there is a disagreement, you know, and when we speak about the idea of nonviolence, to me, it's about conflict prevention and conflict resolution. And how can we come together to have some sort of agreement where, okay, we may not like this solution or this outcome, but we agreed to it. And we agreed to it because at the end of the day, we want to resolve something. We want to be in greater peace. We want to be in greater harmony. It may not be the perfect solution, but it's one that I'm comfortable with and one that I could live with. And there's strength in that. I believe that there is so much strength, not a weakness, not cowardice, but strength. And that's one thing that I'd like to read that's on this card is a quote from Gandhiji, which might be very meaningful to people here. And what it says is, nonviolence is not to be used ever as the shield of the coward. It is the weapon of the brave. And this is something that I've used many times in my work and also in my personal life. And it's given me great strength, in addition to so many quotes by Gandhiji. But also, the other thing is, for those of you who have been in the UN system a long time, and I know, the Honorable Ambassador Chabala would understand this too, that there was at one particular time a formal Gandhi King season for nonviolence. And that is something that I think has been an incredible bedrock to where we've come today, to really make the resolution for October 2nd to be the International Day of Nonviolence. So I think that we can't underestimate all the work that has gone on all these years, all these decades, as Sabita said, of people with goodwill and the will to do good for everyone around the world. And the values that we bring and the way we support the UN as an institution and the way we support one another in our work at the UN, but also the way we support each other in the way we live our lives. So I bring this out and hope that you've gotten a little taste of what the International Day of Nonviolence is about, how it started at the UN and how the bedrock has been laid for so many decades, and how this is a tool that we can continue to use to this day, the way we use other special international days. So I would like to conclude and just ask that we be open to not judging ourselves. We may not act in the best way at times that we see we can, but if we can have more compassion for our own self, I think it starts there with us. And I know this can be a very difficult thing to do, but in challenging times and in these extraordinary times in which we're living, it could be very beneficial to us and to those around us if we try to be open and loving and accepting of ourselves, starting with ourselves to promote peace in our own life, and then it flows outward. I am so privileged to have the honor to introduce Sister Gayatri Naraine, who has been with the Brahma Kumaris UN office for 40 years. She has had an incredible impact in the work of the United Nations by bringing her informed spirit and keen intellect to whatever topic is going on and however she chooses to interact and to support the UN. Gayatri is someone who many people know as a spiritual mentor who preaches from a place of the practice of really putting into practice in her own life and in the work that she's doing in the community and in the UN. So she's someone who is a real inspiration and a role model to me and so many other people. She is one of the founders of the International Day of Yoga Committee at the United Nations, which was started when the UN passed the resolution at the end of 2014, marking June 21 as the International Day of Yoga. She is someone who is now spearheading a new project that the International Day of Yoga Committee at the UN has launched, and that is a special short video clip project. And she has so beautifully introduced some of these clips, particularly around the International Day of Nonviolence, which is when we actually launched this project. So it gives me such great pleasure now to introduce to all of you our dear, dear, dear sister, Gayatri.
Thank you, Denise, and hello to everyone. It's so great to be with all of you this evening and to be sharing on aspects of nonviolence, because I think it's one of the most needed experiences that we want, both at an individual level as well as a collective level. But I was asked this evening to talk to you about the Karuna response to the coronavirus, because way back, I think it was in June, Julia, if I am not mistaken, we started really looking at how can one respond to something like the coronavirus from a spiritual inner space. And so we came up with this kind of a slogan, which turned out to be a paper by Sister Mohini, and then eventually some meditation experiences in the virtual meditation room that Julia created. And so the word Karuna is actually the Hindi word or the Sanskrit word that means compassion. So I was asked to talk about it from a spiritual perspective today with you, which I'll do. And so I feel that it is something that when I was thinking about, I feel, oh my gosh, you know, when we talk about compassion, it actually starts with self-compassion. And to really look at self-compassion in a way that it is not just a response to the coronavirus, but it is also a response to the violence that we are confronting in our world today. And so, of course, COVID has put us on a steep learning curve. We are faced with challenges that we would have never thought about even a year ago. And so we're looking at a world in which the old normal, and I know, Denise, you don't like this word new normal, but I'm going to use it, that the old normal is like disappearing, and we really don't know what the new normal is. And so we are standing like angry about the past, and we are anxious about the future, and we are standing in the present, and we really don't know where to look. Do I look at the past and then, you know, become angry with what is happening? Do I look at the future and then become anxious because I really don't know what is going to happen? But I was once told by a wise woman, Daddy Janki, that whenever I was in a state of anger and anxiety, in order to move away from becoming paralyzed by the negative situations and circumstances, that I must move into my inner state of compassion. At that time, I really didn't know it would have become such an active practice that I would need to do in 2020. So here am I in 2020, following Daddy Janki's advice. But I find myself asking the question, what is the Karuna response to the coronavirus? What is the Karuna response to the violence that we are seeing in the world? And then further in the exploration, is compassion an inherent quality in all living beings? Not just in human beings, but in animals as well. And we have seen it over and over again, that animals could have a very deep sense of compassion. And we have, you know, you just have to Google it. And you see so many stories and so many videos on this. So I believe that deep within the self, deep within the subconscious of the self lies compassion. And compassion is connected to love. And that love gives the strength to be kind and to care for others. A natural strength arises when compassion is truly present in the soul. And it moves us to offer strength and support and to do something practical. Because the word Karuna comes from the word Kara. Kara means to feel something inside, to be moved by it, but not to let it remain just at the level of being moved, but also to allow it to come out and do something practical with it. So it motivates action. So compassion tells me another thing. It tells me that I don't like to suffer. I don't like pain. I don't like hurt. I don't like grief. But deeper than that, compassion tells me that suffering is not natural to the living being. Actually, peace and nonviolence are natural to it. So compassion motivates a will inside of me to help others in pain, to alleviate another's suffering. Compassion is a way of being and feeling that results in a readiness to act for the benefit of others. So when I look at the qualities of compassion, of course, in that paper that was written, there are 6 qualities, but I thought they were actually qualities that could sometimes be looked at as cliched. So I looked at it at a little bit of a deeper level, and I felt that compassion included some combinations: patience and perseverance, loving kindness, and flexibility and resilience. Some claim that the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, actually emerged out of this compassion. And so for me to apply this Karuna response, this compassionate response to the current situation in the world, including the coronavirus, I'd like to share with you an approach that actually has 3 levels to it. And this approach, I hope you will consider it and maybe take it in to do your own explorations of when you're looking at compassion in your life, in your personal life. Because remember, before I can be compassionate to someone else, I have to be compassionate to myself. It starts with self-compassion. So the approach is a process in which we move from compassion fatigue, which we are in right now. The whole world is in a state of compassion fatigue, to compassion inquiry, and then to compassion satisfaction. So the first level, which is compassion fatigue, is that due to the coronavirus and other situations in the world, we are experiencing a compassion fatigue, and we have to accept that that's what's happening to us at different levels, of course. And we are experiencing it like we've never experienced it before, because before we would have put it into the area of just healthcare professionals. But today, it is not just within the context of healthcare professionals. It is also within the essential workers. It also exists in homes. It exists in schools. It exists in corporations. It exists in communities. It exists even, would you believe it, in the police force. I wonder if it isn't because of compassion fatigue that they are behaving the way that they sometimes behave. But how do I know that I have compassion fatigue? How do I know I'm suffering from it? There is emotional exhaustion. This is a state in which I am no longer able to respond to the needs of others, let alone my own needs. I'm not able to respond to the needs of others. I don't even know what my own needs are. And so emotional exhaustion is my capacity to care for myself and to care for others has shrunk. It has become small. The second is anxiety. And this is an extreme state of tension and stress resulting from the preoccupation with the suffering of those I care about. And this has created levels of anxiety for both me, the one who wanting to help the other, but also for the other, the one whom I want to help. And so it's like a compounded kind of anxiety. And the third is anger. And a state of anger is usually a state of emptiness. And that emptiness arises out of not that I've emptied myself of everything, but it's actually filling myself with the pain and suffering that I'm witnessing in the world. And I'm making that pain and suffering my own. And thus I'm emptying myself of my own spiritual reserves. And life then becomes laborious and full of blame and guilt. So then I need to move from this compassion fatigue, once I've recognized I have it, into what I call compassion inquiry. And this approach is to connect to the truth within the self. And so I need a meditative practice for this. I need a contemplative practice or a reflective practice, some kind of a spiritual practice for a spiritual inquiry. And that is to look at what's happening inside of me from a spiritual perspective in the present moment, with the aim to free myself from self-generated suffering and to gain an insight, a clarity, and a choice to change my behavior toward myself. And this requires for me what I call as a crossing over. And it's a moving from authenticity, from attachments actually, to authenticity. Because what are the attachments that I'm holding on to that have taken the form of emotional blocks and obstacles to my being true and authentic to myself? So I need to look at what are the attachments I need to let go of. And the second is I need to move from fear to freedom, because the original nature of the soul is peace and nonviolence. And opening the self to this spiritual characteristic of the self, the nature of the self being peaceful and nonviolent, would create within me new possibilities as I encounter my fears. So I would be curious and creative and use my fears as stepping stones to deeper reflection on purpose and meaning as I move into the future. And of course, the third level is then from the inquiry, I would move to the compassion satisfaction. And so what is compassion satisfaction, which will be the response to the coronavirus or to the situation in our world? It will bring me a deep sense of contentment that results from having relationships. You see, compassion satisfaction plays out in relationships. And I will have a sense of grace and generosity, but in particular, gratitude. It will also enhance a kindness inside of me, and it will reduce my aggression toward myself. And it will give me the courage to confidently choose what it is I need to do in that moment. But most of all, as I said, it develops an attitude of gratitude, starting from the simple things that occur in life that serve to improve my response to what is happening. And that response would be a compassionate response. So I suggest to you, I'm going to give you one simple suggestion, because I know most of you were on that Peace in the Park event that we had last Friday. And I'm suggesting to you to make a commitment, and make this commitment a simple commitment. We have introduced to you that practice of Breathe Peace, which is available on the BKUN YouTube channel, I think, Sabita, is that right? And so I'm asking you to look at breathing as an action that we do naturally, and we do even when we're sleeping, we're breathing, right? And so breathing is an action. And so it is not something I have to think that now it's time to breathe. I'm doing it anyway. So what I'm asking you to do is a simple commitment to choose some micro moments every hour and to become aware of being in peace, that awareness of peace and nonviolence as you breathe. And then what would happen, this simple attention will not only impact the health of your body in terms of your lung capacity, in terms of your heart capacity, in terms of your immune system, but it will also serve to emerge from within the self an awareness that is even deeper than peace and nonviolence. And it will be my compassionate self. So when I breathe in the awareness of peace and my breath is aligned with my thought of peace and my feelings of loving kindness, it is then that my response will be one of compassion. So, dear friends, I think that you may have thought that my presentation would have been one in which it was easy, but it is calling on all of us now to be compassionate human beings and to become self-compassionate first, and to start with a simple thing as my breath, connected to my thought, connected to my moment, and then let compassion flow from there. So thank you, Om Shanti, and breathe peace.
Thank you very much, Gayatri. And also both Gayatri and Denise, I think they've both given us a lot to think about. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a few moments. We're going to, we're going to listen to some beautiful violin music from an artist who's called Ayako. And so that while we're listening to the music, we can just reflect over what we've heard from both Gayatri and Denise. So just give me a moment and I will share the screen. So beautiful, so beautiful. I felt that it really gave us a breath to really connect with that beautiful compassion that it is within each of us. I really enjoyed that. And also it gave us pause to reflect on what both Gayatri and Denise had shared about nonviolence and compassionate nonviolence and how that is brought into action. And now I'm going to invite all of you to join me in a virtual UN meditation room where we're going to experience together a meditation on nonviolence, the Karuna response to the coronavirus. So again, I'm just going to share my screen. This is a 15-minute meditation, and it's going to allow us to explore this whole aspect of nonviolence.
Welcome to the Room of Quiet, a virtual United Nations meditation room, an offering of the Brahma Kumaris to our UN family. As Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld wrote, we all have within us a center of stillness, surrounded by silence. This house, dedicated to work and debate in the service of peace, should have one room dedicated to silence in an outward sense and stillness in the inner sense. This is a room devoted to peace and those who are giving their lives for peace. It is a room of quiet where only thoughts should speak. This is the fourth in a series of meditations on the Karuna response to the coronavirus. Over the next 10 minutes or so, you will hear poetic phrases in the 6 languages of the UN exploring the nature of compassionate non-violence. The meaning of Karuna is compassion, and it comprises 6 core spiritual virtues latent in the soul. These core virtues are transmitted from souls through the spiritual trajectory of awareness, attitude, vision, and action. Or seen in another way, from innate virtues, we develop principles that guide the way we live lives and inform our choices. Compassionate nonviolence. The subtle fabric of the soul is complete peace. A violent thought, word, or action is like a tear in the fabric. It harms the soul before it touches another. When feelings of fear pierce the soul, people may behave in violent ways. The corona pandemic has seeded an atmosphere of fear and panic, allowing waves of exclusion, resentment, and prejudice to emerge. Compassionate non-violence means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. It is always the choice to do no harm or the least amount of harm. Non-violence is the most daring, creative, and courageous way of living, and it is the only hope for our world. nonviolence is an active way of life which always rejects violence and instead applies the force of love and truth as a means to transform conflict and its root causes. Nonviolence demands creativity. It pursues dialogue, seeks reconciliation, listens to the truth in our opponents, and allows God's Spirit to transform us. As Gandhi had said, through our own personal conversion, our own inner peace, we are sensitized to care for God, for ourselves, for each other, for the poor, for the animals, and for the earth. And then we can become true servants of peace in our world. Therein lies the power of compassionate non-violence. Non-violence is the most daring, creative, and courageous way of living, and it is the only hope for our world.
La non-violence est la façon de vivre la plus audacieuse, créative et courageuse. Et c'est aussi l'espoir pour notre monde.
暴力是最关爱、有创造性，并且是最有勇气的一种生活方式。这是世界的希望。
La no violencia es la más entrañable forma de vivir, creativa y valiente, y es la esperanza para nuestro mundo.
اللا عنف هو أسلوب الحياة الأكثر جرأة وإبداعاً وشجاعة، وهو الأمل لعالمنا.
Ненасилие – это самый созидательный и смелый образ жизни, который является надеждой для нашего мира.
I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to work with people who are fun, funny, energetic, creative, and insightful.
Somebody's doing something.
They happen to be 14.
It's you, Julia.
I really do think kids keep a person young. And I think that's probably why when I'm in.
At least it was something positive.
Kids do keep us young, right?
So, what a full evening we've had. I'm sure we're all up to here. Our energy level of compassion has not just awoken, but it has risen to a very high level. And time is running away from us as it always does. Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you so much, Gayatri and Julia, for that lovely video, and Ayako for coming in and entertaining us. And so as much as we would love to hear from you, but because of time, what we thought of doing is to have a pop quiz. And hopefully through that, 5 simple questions, we can get your voice into the room. So it shouldn't take you long. It will take you maybe a couple of minutes. And if you answer that, these 5 questions, it's multiple choice. And then we will see, of course, the percentage of what you answered. I'm not sure if you're familiar with how Zoom does its poll, but it's very simple. So are you all seeing the questions? Okay.
Yes.
So, all right, good, thank you. So if you can answer their 5 simple questions, and you will have about 2 or 3 minutes. The first 2 might be a little tedious, but the rest are much easier. Shall I give you all another few seconds? Maybe half a minute. Okay, I think that's it. Let's end the poll, end the quiz, and now we share the results. And everything is anonymous, okay? So nobody will know what you said. You will just get the percentage. So here we go. Are you ready to see what you came up with? Okay. Oops, did I do stop? Wait. Share the results. Okay. share the results. So let's see, how helpful was the meditation experience for you in your understanding of compassionate nonviolence? 91% of you said very helpful. A small percentage said somewhat helpful. And this was a tricky one. To do no harm or to do the least amount of harm. Choose which is the closest meaning to you. 9% said be a vegetarian. Let's see top. See with love to uplift others. 64%. So that's great. No angry thoughts, no thoughts of self-doubt. Wonderful. That's great. Then number 3, how open are you in being more compassionately nonviolent? Yay, I think we're totally successful this evening. 100% said. 100%. So the universe is going to be very pleased with us, very open. Okay, so now who is your inspiration for nonviolence? Mahatma Gandhi, 64, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, a family member, your spiritual mentor. And I went, in the meditation, I was seeing Mother Teresa, and I thought, she is a good inspiration also that could be added. So lovely. And lastly, how often do you observe the International Day of Nonviolence? Thank you for your honesty. Every year, 36 sometimes, and many said, when I remember. So that's so lovely. That's lovely. Thank you for your honesty. So this brings us to the end of our togetherness this evening. And I'm sure everyone has many things to think about, to add to your list of beautiful elevated thoughts that you want to keep for yourself, and also to use when you do your breathe peace moments. And so wishing you a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Gayatri. And I thank Julia. I thank the video. I thank Julia on behalf of the video. So, bye. Take care and all the best.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Lovely to see you, Beth.
All of you, Beth, all of you, Anne-Marie, everyone, Martha, and Isaiah, Pano slept already.
Juliet.
So lovely to see all of you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Juliet.
Candida.
Yes, Candida.
Good.
Everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Jagdish.
Good night.